He's a bitter man.
Oh, thank you, sir, thank you. Oh, God. Yeah, all right. Do you remember the comedians? Oh, I was on that for a few years, bit of a star, 7:15 every Saturday night. They said, will you go to this old folks' home on your way to your Christmas show and say a few words? I said, okay. And I went walking in, and this little old lady was sat on her own. I said, hello. She said, hello. I said, do you know who I am? She said, no, but if you ask the matron, she'll tell you. And my dad was, he was 80. I sent him a stripogram with the mac and the suzzies and everything. Knocked his door, he opened the door, and she went, super sex. He said, I'll have the soup. But they'd gone in this place. There was two old fellas together, and the one told his mate the same joke 24 times. And his mate said, how do you remember them all? But where I live, it's terrible now, you know. I mean, you daren't shut the window in the summer for trapping somebody's fingers. They take the sleep out of your eyes. I had an advent calendar sent last year. 6 of the windows were boarded up. They said, will you go to this pub in Wolverhampton and knock a pile of pennies over? I said, yes, if they're still there, see. And they had that bloke from Aston. And he went across the ground zero, you know, and he's walking round. This copper said, how you going, buddy? He said, I'm all right, mate. He said, that's a quaint accent you got. Where you from? He said, England. He said, what part of England? He said, Aston. He said, what state's that in? He said, about the same as this. Anyway, I got to this pub, and the boss said, I don't want anybody to see you before you've been on. Go round the back. And I went round the back, and he's got 3 of these Doberman pincers about this big. I said, what about the dogs? He says, don't worry about the dogs. He said, they've been castrated. I said, I was more concerned about them biting me. And this... And this one got my leg, and he was doing something to my leg. I said, get down, and he went, ah. I said, hurry up then. And this kid come in the pub, he was ugly, and he couldn't pull. And his mate said, there's a woman by the bar with 2 heads. They're both ugly, but she's got a lovely figure. And he found this woman with these 2 heads. He says, can I buy you 2 a drink, say? And they went, oh yes, oh yes. I do all the parts. So I mess about, I'm a bit desperate for a bit of affection. And we are. Oh, God. Cut a long story short, he took her back and he was making love to her. And the one head said, oh, you're wonderful. Oh. And the other head said, I'm fed up just lying here doing nothing. Would you mind if I played the trumpet? So he's making love to this woman, and the one head was going, oh. It was just after war. He's had 3.5 hours of this trumpet. The wax was running down his neck. And he had a shower, and he was in his house in Wolverhampton about a month later. And there was a knock at the door. And he opened the door, and it was this woman with these 2 heads. And she said, you probably won't remember me. I just... What's the hell? Oh, I tell you. But everything's going for a Burton now, isn't it, eh? Oh. Nothing else gone for a Burton. My wife was in labour that long with our last child, they had to shave her twice. You wouldn't catch it. Little old fellow, he went to the doctors. He said, I want a sperm count. And the doctor said, how old are you? He said, I'm 96. He said, well, what do you want one of them for? He said, them free, I'm entitled, I paid me money. Here's a jar, bring a sample. He went back a month later with this jar, and the doctor said, there's nothing in here. He said, no. He said, I tried it with my left hand. And I tried it with my right hand. And the missus tried it with her left hand and her right hand. And she tried it with her teeth in and her teeth out. And we couldn't get the lid off the jar. Now, but do you remember the pucker pies we used to have when we were kids? Pucker pies. The gravy in them, you could underseal a car with it, couldn't you? And they used to have them in a little glass box on the counter, wrapped in cling film. They looked like suffocated tortoises. Well, I was in and I thought, I'll have me a pucker pie. And being a black country lad, I thought, before I bite it, I'm going to see what's in it. And I broke it open, and there was a maggot in the middle. I said, there's a maggot in this pie. He said, it's fat. I said, he ought to be. Is that all the meat? But there was a young couple sat by the door. Oh, he must have loved this woman. Champagne in a bucket. I mean, it's dear enough in a bottle. And they were getting stuck in. And all of a sudden, this fella sat bolt upright and he went... Never batted her eyes, this woman, sat like a hamster. I said, excuse me. I said, your husband, he's just slid under the table. And she said, he hasn't, he's just come through the door. And we were... Oh. I'm bringing a few memories back in here tonight. The old fellow went to the chemist. He said, have you got any Viagra? He said, have you got a prescription? He said, no, but I got a photograph of the wife. And the little old dear went into the chemist. Could you help me? If I can, yes, but it's rather personal. He said, that's quite all right. You can speak to me in the strictest confidence. He said, my husband's having a bit of a problem in the matrimonial bed. And he said, what's the symptoms? I said, well, it's a program in America about a man with a bald head. He said, no, that's The Simpsons. What's the symptom? She said, well, the only way I can explain it, I suppose, is when we're making love, it's like trying to play snooker with a rope. And I've been reading about this Viagra. Is it as good as they say it is? He said, well, I've got to tell you the truth. I take it myself. It's very good. She said, can you get it over the counter? He said, yes, if I take two. I'll tell you something else. Happy days in here again. But this kid come in the pub and the boss said a pint. He said, thank you. He said, £3.20. He said, what for? He said, well, you just had a pint. He said, you asked me if I wanted one. That was a figure of speech. He said, I'm not paying you. He said, well, drink it and don't come in here again. As you wake up with a crowd round you, pal. Fortnight later, he was back in the pub. And the boss said, I thought I told you never to come in here again. He said, I've never been in here in my life. He said, you must have a double then. He said, I'll have a brandy. He said to the boss, where's the toilet? He said, it's up the yard, but I better come with you. He said, what for? He said, well, you got two wooden legs. He said, I got here. He said, I'm not trying to upset you. It's a very old property. All the yard's blue bricks. Over the years, with the mining subsidence, they've sunk in places. We've had the builders in, there's a lot of clay, and this week it's persistently poured down with rain. And the weather's been bad. With the uneven ground, the wet clay, and your two wooden legs, you could walk out of here and cripple yourself. He said, I'll be all right. He come back half hour later, there was mud in his hair, all down his back. He was in a fettle. The gaffer said, I told you I should have come with you. He said, I got there all right. I was sat in the toilet. The bulb had gone, it was a bit dark. And all of a sudden, the door opened and somebody said, who's left this barrow in here? And he got me by the legs. Pulled me all down the yard. Have a super Christmas, Happy New Year, God bless.
Come and take a bow, Lee Wilson. How good is that? That's what comedy's about. Brilliantly. Right. Thank you very much.